Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to get started on the Hazard 5 guide content. And I was going to have this just be one massive video, but massive might have been a little bit of an understatement, as just in drafting the script for the whole video, my little notepad got to almost 500 lines. So we're going to break it up a little bit more. The organization might be a bit odd, but I'm just going to break it up into chunks that make sense. Starting with one of the things I think is most important to get right before you start trying to learn anything serious about Hazard 5, meta building, or high concept gameplay tech is getting your armor spec right, because I see a lot of people out there in the wild that have this wrong. So without further ado, let's look at the mods that you should be taking on your armor for Hazard 5. In Tier 1, we have a shorter regeneration delay for your shield, faster shield regeneration after a longer delay, or 5 extra mineral carrying capacity. I have a lot of mixed opinions on this tier, but I'll go ahead and give you the facts. You'll be able to take more chip damage shots with the lower regeneration delay sooner. However, your shield will reach full capacity sooner with increased regeneration speed, albeit after a longer initial delay, which is a deal breaker in my opinion, as whenever you're getting chip shot in a swarm in Haz 5, you're going to continue to be chipped with damage until that fight is resolved, so shield really doesn't play that much of a factor. Which segues me into the next point, in that if you're continually taking chip damage, you're realistically not going to be able to go 6 seconds without getting hit in a fight. Overbearingly, I'd say this is down to personal preference and there's no wrong choice to take in this tier. Personally, I feel like I take the majority of the damage from large chunk shots and very little chip damage, which to me makes shields almost irrelevant in all factors because they're going to be fully charged and then they're going to be broken no matter what. For all of these reasons and the fact that shield disruption exists and I don't want to change my armor spec for every mission, I personally just take bigger mineral bags. As the shield mods really aren't enough to swing anything in your favor in a fight, and the mineral carrying capacity is just nice to have. Personally, multiple times I've found myself in the situation where someone else has gone to deposit their nitra in a mine head, and they've come back with 39 because they were nearly full and didn't finish mining a large vein. If I was to say be full on nitra at 40 at this time, and go to deposit at the mine head or mule, we would be left with 78 to 79 nitro, which is not a great situation to be in, especially at the time where a swarm might be spawning soon. Having 45 carrying capacity mitigates this in that even if someone else only has 35 nitro, you'll be able to pick up the slack and make it over the finish line for that first resupply. For all of these reasons, I just like bigger mineral bag. And due to my very little reliance on shield, that's where I make my choice for the second tier as well. There is a very reasonable argument to be made for shields in lower hazard levels. However, the extra health that's provided to you by the health modification in Tier 2 really does make a large difference in higher difficulty missions. Because between these two mods, Overcharger giving an extra 5 shield versus Healthy giving an extra 20 health, that's a total of 15 hit points in difference. So while yes, your shield will regenerate and over the course of a mission may come out to take more damage, on Hazard 5 it's more about surviving the largest chunk shots in a short amount of time to be able to stay on your feet and keep pushing the objective. Because if you get down by a single shot from a spitball or a tri-jaw because you were at 80% health instead of 100% and that extra little bit of shield isn't helping you out, that shield isn't regenerating while you're lying on the ground. However, if you have a larger health pool and can sustain more direct damage before going down, you may have the chance to heal, which will occur much faster than your shield regeneration would, either by resupply or just whacking down some red sugar. Both of these healing effects are essentially instant whenever the healing does occur, so there's no waiting around for that 5 extra points. For this reason, I take Healthy. There's no choice in Tier 3, but we'll go ahead and go over what all the classes have available at this tier. Scout is the only one that has less than a 50% damage resistance. His is to fall damage for 33%, which is probably correct as I think 50% fall damage would be a bit overpowered. And for the other classes, the Driller has a 50% fire resistance, and for some reason this modification also makes him completely immune to the little pinhole fires in the magma core. Engineer has a 50% poison resistance, which most people consider to be the least useful of all the armor modifications for any of the classes. However, considering that Acid Spitter's lingering chip damage, Praetorian spit and gas, as well as pretty much every ambient source of damage in the fungus bogs is considered poison, I think it's not a bad one to have, although it's definitely not as useful as the Gunners, which is 50% explosive resistance. This can give you a large amount of sustain against some of the more dangerous one-shot chunking enemies in the game, like exploders, bulk detonator popcorn balls, and your driller friend. So back to Scout. If there's anything to take away from this video, it would be your 4th tier perk choice. Now from a window view, all of these seem passable and usable in their own way. However, one of these is dominant by a country mile. First, we have Shockwave. Whenever your shield breaks, it does damage to the enemies around you. Now this sounds very good. However, it doesn't really specify the amount of damage that is done by this Shockwave. It is an area-based attack, meaning that it does have damage fall off. At its worst, it can do 8 damage to enemies, and at its best, at the closest point to you, it will do 16. And now, if you aren't well acquainted with damage numbers and how much health some enemies have in this game, this may sound decent. However, Swarmers have 15 health, meaning that if they are not immediately touching you, they will not even be killed by this Shockwave. And when it comes to higher health enemies like Grunts and Slashers, which have 100 or more, this damage is completely negligible and you'd be much better off with something else. For our second skill, Static Discharge. Whenever your shield breaks, it releases a discharge that has a chance to stun nearby enemies. Now, this isn't actually correct. It has a chance to electrify nearby enemies, which is not stun. Stun is a status effect that renders an enemy completely immobile and interrupts any attack that they're performing. Electrified, however, does a slow chip damage effect for 2 damage per tick and reduces the enemy's movement speed, not stopping them completely and not preventing or slowing their modes of attack. So once again, this mod sounds pretty good, but in practice is not good at all, as it lacks the ability to kill or disable any enemies. And as you can probably assume from the way I talked about these other 2 perks, the one we're going to pick is Breathing Room. Breathing Room doubles the amount of invincibility that you have after a revive. Now on the lower hazards, it may be easier to get back into a fight due to the extreme amount of health that you are revived with. However, on hazard 4 and 5 in particular, whenever you're revived, you will receive full shields and 14 health if you are running healthy. This will leave you at basically one-shot threshold for 90% of the enemies in the game, which is not a place that you want to stay. So having that extra 3 seconds to get yourself away from the enemies, collect some health, snag a resupply, and just get yourself back into the fight is far superior to the middling amount of damage and crowd control that these other mods provide you. So for that reason, we're going to take Breathing Room. Here's a handy little chart I made of the interactions between resupplies and Breathing Room invincibility. All the way on the left, we see that the amount of invincibility we have without Breathing Room does not cover a standard resupply. And next we see that it just barely covers a resupply if we do have resupplier, leaving us a mere half second to move on either side of that resupply. With Breathing Room but no resupplier perk, we have 1 second of wiggle room on either side, which gives us a little bit more flexibility to jump over to the resupply after being revived and jump out once it's completed. And the best possible combination of getting yourself back into the fight, as you can see here, is having Breathing Room and resupplier. This will leave you a whopping 3.5 seconds on either end of the resupply, meaning that you have a full 1.5 seconds to run to the resupply, a 1.5 seconds afterwards to reposition, and another 0.5 seconds to do something else. I don't know, make yourself some breakfast. That whopping amount of time can really give you some time to think and reposition while your invincibility is still ticking. All in all though, you do have a little bit of wiggle room in the first 2 tiers to take whatever you like, but when it comes to Hazard 5, I would be very cautious about taking Overcharger, and if you're not a person that likes to switch your builds around constantly, probably run bigger Mineral Bag for those occasions where you end up on Shield Disruption, and don't want to look like a fool with one of these 2 perks. But that about wraps things up for our first Haz 5 video. The next thing I'd like to go over is perks, both active and passive, and how they interface directly with Hazard 5. Plenty of people have made videos about the perks, how they work, and even ranking them on tier lists. However, I'd like to look at it through a lens directly of how it interacts with Hazard 5, as some perks shift in powers very significantly. After that, we'll go through all of the classes in one video, talking about support and movement tools and some standout upgrades regarding those. And then after that, we'll get into builds and standout overclocks for Hazard 5. This is going to be a pretty significant undertaking, so expect some more short form content interspersed between these videos, and maybe potentially a mission guide as well, but this is my roadmap for the near future. As always, thank you for watching. If you'd like to catch me live, I do stream over on Twitch. If you'd like to talk to me or my community members and ask questions about playing Hazard 5, you can find us over on Discord. And as always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.